Hello, it's May 2019, and I'm going to do a very in-depth and detailed review of Fastcall inbound call routing, really targeted towards the advanced setup, the advanced admin. Fastcall has many different videos and help tips for all of our different capabilities, include pieces of our inbound call routing, and I'll go through where you're going to find those in this video. So let's start here. We're logged into Fastcall. The first thing we should talk about are phone numbers, which we use for inbound call routing. And phone numbers are assigned to users or sometimes we'll say groups. Um, and the group assignment is really referring to an IVR, interactive voice response, or an ACD, automatic call distribution. So within a phone number, you'll see here, um, this is a provisioned phone. It's a UK phone number, but we'll click in here and we'll see inside the phone setup. The phone number is here. You can give it a name, which could be different than the phone number. You can add some notes. You can also add a ringtone. This is a UK number. You can add a UK ringtone here. We're telling you the capabilities of this number. In this case, it's voice and SMS when it was provisioned. Um, then you're selecting um, the outbound caller ID. Do you want the phone to be used as outbound caller ID? And you may not. If you're just routing inbound calls, you may not need to see this in the widget as outbound caller ID, is SMS enabled, pretty straightforward. But really, what it starts to diverge here is this phone assigned to a single user, which we just say is a user phone, or to an IVR? So let's start with the user phones because that's the more basic setup. So in the user phones, and Fastcall really assumes that the user is doing this herself and has some control over these user settings herself. It can be done by the admin, but the individual user routing is a user setting. So under here, my settings. So I'm going to come into my inbound routing, and the inbound routing for a user is a little different than when a phone is assigned to a group or to ACD, auto call distribution. Um, for a user phone, we support overflow, which is actually what we see here, which means we're going to try the first phone for 20 seconds. We're going to try the next phone for 20 seconds. And after these commands, the call will go to the next set of instructions, which is usually voicemail, which is, I think we're actually changing these settings in the next update, but same basic idea. Voicemail is enabled. Voicemail is enabled. There's a message, which could be text to speech or recorded message, some details around the specific. That's why my own voicemails are not getting transcribed, and the option to transcribed. I just noticed that my own voicemails weren't being transcribed. So these are user settings. Voicemail, we generally expect this says I have the general voicemail set up there, but we generally expect the user is going to set up her own voicemail. It is sort of a common point of fault that the voicemail might not be enabled. We do enable it by default. Okay, but these are user when phones are assigned to users. There's a user routing. There's some voicemail. You can also add another phone here for simul ring, where both phones will ring at the same time. Okay, when phones are assigned to a group, the setup is different, happens in the application. Um, it happens through an IVR. Go to the same phone number again. That's what this phone number happens to be. This phone is assigned to an IVR, which just says transfer. The IVRs are set up here under call handling, inbound, IVR. They're actually not under inbound, under IVR. And the IVR are set up in different actions. And there's an option for actions and flows. We generally use actions. And all these actions are kind of nested together. Um, so I click the plus and I pick my first action. And the first action might be time-based routing, which will give different actions based upon different times. Voicemail. The one thing that we often say for sure, you want to outline if you're going this path and you're listening to this video, chances are you are, because this is the advanced setup. Um, you want to outline what you're looking to do here. Very important. And you want to share that outline with Fastcall. Because there's something there that doesn't make sense. We need to tell you about it soon. But you should outline the prospect picks up the phone, they dial, this should happen. You go through that. We're going to ring this group, we're going to ring that group, we're going to go to voicemail, we're going to overflow to a call center, these times, that times, write it all down and send that to us. And once you start building this IVR, generally you're going to start building it from the bottom up. So the voicemail might come first. So as you're putting these together, you generally are starting at the bottom and you're going to work your way up. But we're creating all the individual actions. I'm going to put the call transfer action here first, because that's so the action of call transfer can have a name. There's an option for an introductory automated message on all these actions. I think you might not need the introductory automatically message for every action. Now this one's a transfer, so the message may say, please hold while we transfer your call. So you have to sort of think about where those messages go. Here's the scope. So the scope is you're routing calls to a group. And then you're going to select your group. The groups are set up here. Over here, we'll jump back over that to a second. So we're going to route the call to a group. Doesn't matter. I'm going to pick my group. The strategy is round robin goes in a circle, and the round robin distribution immediately takes the call in a circle. You have 4 users, it just rings the 4 users. Users are not placed on hold, and it's going to go around, in this case, 3 times for 15 seconds. 15 is a little low. I think that might be our default, but and 3 might be the default too. Um, but you determine how many times you're going to go around. So 3 times at 20 seconds, depending upon how many users you have, and we'll get into some more of the details about this, important details a little later. That's round robin. Simul-ring rings all users together, but you really want to be careful with simul-ring, because if you are ringing 4 users all at the same time, 1 user answers the phone, the other 3 does not. You can quickly train your users to never answer their phone, because they pick up the phone and there's a 1 in 4 chance, maybe a 1 in 10 chance. You have a simul ring with 20 users, there's a very low chance that they're going to get a call, and you'll just train them not to answer the phone. So simul ring works, we think, when there's a few users, and even when they can see each other if they're sitting in a shared workspace. But that's simul ring. Simul ring also cannot be used along with a 3-way call, which we use for listen in. So there's some limitations to simul ring. The round robin queue is a newer feature. You see it still says beta. Queue is more of a traditional hold. So queue places and I'll show you that, will place the caller on hold, and we introduce some new features. So waiting audio. So that's your traditional hold message, which you pick here, and the ability to read the position in the queue, which is here, and you can customize that message here. So this is call comes in, we're holding it in a queue, and as those round robin users become available, we're transferring the call to them. But the user is actually on hold listening to a waiting audio. The difference here really is they're listening to audio, and here's the message in their queue. The distribution is the same. Regular round robin would have no message first. It would just go right to that group. Of course, there's an introductory message first, but with the uh, round robin queue, the message is repeating. I think there might be some option here that it says so there's a timeout, so the message will repeat. Okay, we have this idea of no answer IVR. No answer IVR is what happens when the above process doesn't complete. So in this case, if you go around the round robin and the no answer doesn't complete, well, you can do a couple of things. You can transfer the call to another group. You can transfer the call to a call center. You could go to voicemail. Those are probably the 3 things that you would do. You could play a menu again, right? hopefully we want you to write all these down. So when you do come up with your strategy for your IVR, please do write it down in an outline, but you're going to set it up here, right? Most of this video, I want to talk about missing inbound calls, but I wanted to go over some of the setup first. Uh, so that's all managed here. So you've provisioned a phone number, you're setting up your IVR, you've outlined your IVR, I mentioned groups. I'm going to pop back over to groups real fast. You've created groups who have members, and you come in here. I give the group a name, uh, test, and you assign users to this group. It's super duper easy to do. It's here, um, and you're done. And you create a group. So you can transfer those calls to the group. So you're provisioning phone numbers, you set up the IVR, you're transferring calls to groups. Groups are going to answer calls on what we named an ACD receiver, and it's a little bit different than user phones, which is kind of why I started there. Hopefully you're still with me. So these are the phones we use for user phones. This phone here is the ACD phone. Um, it's used to answer the ACD calls. In this case, it's a soft phone. Um, so in this case, the user is going to answer the call on the soft phone, and the ring time is set here. So the ACD phone in a group is different than the user phones, and you'll see that here. So um, that's important. Okay, so what do we talk about here? So we also have, so we're in here inbound. We talked about inbound settings, which are here, which are kind of important. This is just enabled voicemail for the org. There's some missed call settings. This is also kind of important. This is an email that's for a missed call. You can add CCs, so that's helpful. There's an enable automatic user logout. We enable this, and I said 3. So that means if there's a user in a group and that user has missed one call, you can log her out. That user's missed 2 calls, you can log her out. Users missed 3 calls, you can log her out. The problem is, without this set, you can continue to round robin calls to that user, but if she's not answering the phone, you're just kind of messing up the ACD. Because if you're ringing that user for 20 seconds and you're going around a few times in a circle, you're just adding hold time to the user. So the ability to automatically log the user out, pretty helpful. Okay, now anything else here? So blocks phone numbers. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to get back to managed objects because that's important too. So what does that mean? So I logged user out just means they go offline. When a user is offline, they cannot receive an inbound call. When a user is offline, they can make an outbound call. They cannot receive an inbound call. They have to go available again. When the user is available, they can receive a call. When they're on an active call, the application knows and they don't receive an inbound call. There is a mechanism if they have finished a call and they're taking their notes and a new call comes in, they'll see it and they have the option to finish their notes or answer the call. So if the user is finished a call, the call has hung up, but is still doing some after call processing, um, the application should manage that. And there's another setting for that as well, which is essentially the time between calls that the user needs to kind of take a break. Um, but that's what the availability is. So the user has to be available to receive an inbound call, and if they are logged out, that would say not available. You will see all of your users in a couple of places. One, you'll see them in the user panel. And you'll also see their status here. So I'm offline. Am I offline? No, I'm available. So let's actually should have. So I should be online and available. Yep, so there we go. So I'm available. So this user panel should update in real time with the availability of your users and also who is on an active call. You'll see that here. You're going to also see some of that in a dashboard, which I'm going to get to in a couple of minutes. But that availability is important, and it's something that you can see. And in this, just you see it in this user panel. Dan is here. I can come over to Dan. You should know this. I can go to the user's profile for Dan, and I can edit his user status here. There's other ways to do that too, but that's how we can get a look at all Dan's. This is kind of like a mini granting support access, but in our application, right? And I can go back to the admin settings. Okay, so we talked about user status, which is important. Okay, there's a couple other things I want to talk about real fast. Hopefully not too fast. Um, Okay, so let's talk about managed objects. When a call comes in, we are going to search Salesforce for the phone number. Um, so you've provisioned your phones, you set up your IVR, you've added your users to the groups. Now calls come in, right? What's going to happen? Here's a call that came in, and there's a voicemail, and there's no lookup. It was 2 seconds. So they hung up. That tells us that they hung up. I can use this and search Salesforce. There's no matching record for that phone number. It's a toll-free number. I could create a new lead if I want to. We actually just recently improved that area. Or I could also come in here and say, you know what, I don't really like that inbound call. I could block it, and I'll put it on a blocked list. Um, and there are these are outbound calls. Outbound calls. That's a missed call. That was me and a missed call. Now you can see this inbound call, missed, red is missed, has a lookup to a contact and an account, which is mapped in our application. Um, and let's see here. This is another, so I can do a search, doesn't exist. And I can create a new lead here. We are searching, the objects that we're searching on these inbound calls are managed here. So when a call comes in, we're searching account, case, contact, lead, opportunity. Not all of these by default, you're managing this. If you have custom objects that you want us to search, you could add it. If you wanted us to not search for leads, you could remove it. Fastcall will, when the call comes in, we will create a lookup. So in this case, this is a test, but we created a lookup. We'll create a lookup if the phone number exists on one matching object. So in this case, this phone number exists on lots of matching objects because we use it for testing. So this phone number exists on lots of matching objects. When that call comes in, our application says, well, we don't know which one you want us to match, so we're not going to match any. If the phone number exists on one matching object, we will create the lookup. If the phone number exists on both the account and contact, and you didn't tell us where to attach that lookup, we're not going to create the lookup for you. So you can both control those managed objects here, but you're also controlling the lookup here. So for this case, this was I created a lookup to my contact on this account. I could also come in here and I can say, um, you know, that should be Fastcall. So that in that case, the lookup would be attached to the account and not to the contact. So all calls that come from that account, doesn't matter who the contact is, will have the lookup to Fastcall. And that just really depends upon the individual. It just really depends upon the individual phone at the caller's office, right? If the caller's on their mobile phone, that's their phone. But Fastcall has no way to know that was their mobile phone. We don't know that. It could be the contact's direct dial number, which in that case you'd want to have a lookup to the contact. But if the phone number is a general number for the company, again, Fastcall doesn't know that. You have to map that. Your users have to map that up. And one area is if the call comes in and the user creates the lookup to the contact, or the phone number exists in the contact, so the lookup happened automatically, but that really was the general company number, your users have to update that. The Fastcall doesn't know that, right? If somebody calls us from Starbucks, we don't know whether that is the Starbucks main number or the end user's direct dial number. There's no way for us to know that. So you manage that in the lookup table, and it's all managed here. And if it's wrong, you just pop the X out and you change it. Um, Here's test. If I do the lookup and I don't like test, I just change it, and I could say, you know what, that wasn't test. That was rich test. He's a better test than test, and now the lookup has changed. Easy, right? But this lookup, it's important, and there's a lookup table behind this, and a custom object with that lookup table, which is very simple. The lookup table just has a phone number field and a record ID, Salesforce record ID, and it maps them together. And it has the date and the user who created the lookup. And if the lookup is wrong, you can get access to that object and you just delete the record. Nothing that you can really break around this lookup, but there's a lookup table here, and you just have to know there's limitations because Fastcall doesn't know what phone the user is when they're calling you. Okay, what else I want to say here? So this is an inbound call coming in. I can, as I mentioned before, I can block that phone number. If I don't like it, I can just delete the task. If I wanted to, I can play the voicemail. In this case, it's 2 seconds. I'm not going to bother. I can SMS reply to the missed call. I can phone call to reply to this missed call. If I reply to a missed call, Fastcall is mapping the reply call to the missed call. And you'll see that as a lookup relationship between those calls, so the reply call. And as of our next update, we're going to start giving you the time between the missed call and the reply call. So you'll know if you called back in an hour or 2 hours or 10 minutes. And that's super helpful. So let's pop over here to the Salesforce task. So here's the Salesforce task. There's a missed call, the subject, the time, the caller ID, which again is a toll-free number, the phone number that they dialed, which is in will help you. The missed call was the status. Call result was no contact, which I think we set by default. So this is your Salesforce task, which is standard call recording. There's nothing here because it was 2 seconds. There is a custom record for voicemail, which helps for voicemail reporting. There's also a custom record for call. You may not have these on your page layout. You may not want these on your page layout. You're going to customize your page layout. Hopefully you've already done that, but you'll customize your page layout. But I want to show you what's on call. So the task is a standard Salesforce object. Call is the custom object used by Fastcall. Standard object for task in Salesforce has a hard limit for 100 custom fields, and it cannot be changed, and you cannot add more. The custom record for sales object for Salesforce is ours. We control it. All these fields are ours. They're all custom fields. They're all Fastcall custom fields. You could add your own, but they are fast. There's no other application that you would install that's going to write to our custom object. So it's ours. We don't compete for it. And a couple of things that you'll see on the custom object, which is why we like the custom object for calls, is there's also a lookup to the phone number. So you can see that this call came in. Not only did they dial that phone number, which we're telling you is the number they dialed, we're also giving you a lookup to the phone number. And if this user has multiple phone numbers, you can have a lookup to the user, so that's helpful. If there was an IVR assigned to this number, you'll have a lookup to the IVR. Call recording is the same, but two really big differences for the call recording is there is a custom button it's actually two custom buttons. There's two custom buttons on the call. One is to delete the recording. You can use this custom button to delete the recording in Twilio and it's deleted. If you delete the object, the call recording is not deleted, and that recording exists. You can remove this custom button from the profile if you don't want users to have access to the custom button. You can remove it. Assign related record works a lot like what we saw in the widget itself. It enables me to search the org and create a match, right? If this was Steve, I can create a match to the user here. Um, and then basically the same idea. And there's also the option to create a new lead like we do in the widget. So this is a way on the record itself to do what we did in the widget, which is either do a lookup or create a new lead. Okay, so where were we? We were on the call record. Okay. Okay, so the other thing I want to tell you is the two custom buttons, the delete and the assign. Another thing that we really like about using the custom object for calls is that a custom object can have track changes, history changes, and you don't have that on a Salesforce task. So when this, matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that call recording in Twilio. Delete, because it's 2 seconds long, doesn't really matter. Call recording was deleted. I come back. Um, let's do a refresh. No, we don't always need a refresh for something like that. We do. Call's gone, right? Recording's gone. Never coming back. Ain't never coming back. It's deleted. But what's important is when you say, "Oh my gosh, what happened? What happened? What happened?" The call is deleted. I can tell you who deleted it. Rich deleted it, right? It's gone, right? When you say, "What happened to call recording?" It's gone. We can enable track history on a custom object. You can't do that on a Salesforce task. So we put the delete button only on calls and not on the Salesforce task because you want to track changes, and that's important. We're also adding the ability to start tracking the lookup. So if that lookup is changed, we're going to start tracking that. It hasn't been added yet, so it might be a month or so, but it'll come this summer, 2019. Which is really helpful. The voicemail I mentioned is here. So this lookup relationship to, oh, well, this call didn't have a lookup. So the related record ID, if when a lookup relationship is created, there's going to be a related record ID here. Let's go to another call, just so that's kind of fun. So we'll go to Rich Test, who we liked better than Test Test. So now we're at the record for Rich Test. This is the lookup, Rich Test. So when I come into the call, there is a related record ID, which you may not need to have on your page layout. I mean, I have it here. That's just code. That's the Salesforce ID. You don't really need to have it on your page layout, but you will see that I have track changes. I actually take that back. So track changes is enabled in my org. It's not packaged. You can add track changes to your org. You should. If you're listening to this video, add track changes to the object for calls, but we are going to package that as well. So I created a lookup to a new record. Now, this is only the Salesforce ID, so you have to kind of look to see who that is. You can cut and paste it and find it in Salesforce, but it basically says, hey, what happened? Why did the lookup change? We're tracking it. And again, the benefit of calls. So we can track, you can see it here. So the lookup relationship changed from this to this. Now we can look those up, and it's here. And that's helpful. So that's the custom object for calls. Did I talk about dashboard yet? I don't think so. Okay, so dashboard. So we talked about recent calls in the widget, the ability to, and I can scroll through here. I can see the recent calls that are inbound and missed. We had some missed calls here. These are the users' calls and the users managing them here. You are able, as the sales executive, as management, as the admin, or end user, to access the dashboard. And the dashboard is giving you all calls. So I can say here, I only want to see calls assigned to a group, which could be an IVR, and I can see those here. I can see I need to come in and I need to see calls that are assigned to Camillo, right? Camillo's a developer, he has no calls, which could. Um, right? I want to come in here and I want to see all my in progress calls. And this is where you're going to surface your in progress calls for listen in. So that you would do that. You could do that here. You could do it on the user panel, which I showed you a couple minutes ago. The dashboard is the newer interface for that and better. But you can also come in and you can see all of your missed calls. And what's great about this is I can come in and say, give me all my missed calls. They're here. I can come in to the dashboard. It looks just like the widget. I can phone reply to a missed call. I can here. That's actually my number. So I'm going to call back. I'm going to phone reply back to this missed call. It's going to pop up. It's going to take me to the record, right? Hello, hello, hello. Thank you. This is new too, by the way. We're starting to show the audio here. It's going to empty out of that, and we're going to say contact test. Um, and the call is here. But now I'm going to come in here and see here the call was just created. I didn't refresh the page. In that case, I don't have to refresh the page. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look at this task for my reply call. Um, well, actually, I go to this call and we're going to see a related list for the reply in the dashboard. So I come in here and which one was it? Was it outbound, outbound? Actually, let's just go back. We were looking at missed calls. So status equals missed, and I think it was this one, right? And now you see there's a new tab here called Call Navigator, which you'll notice doesn't exist over here, right? So Call Navigator is a new tab, and I come over to Call Navigator, and there's now a lookup relationship between the inbound missed call and the outbound reply call. And in the next update, we're going to give you the time difference between those two calls. In this case, 4 hours ago, so it's here, but we're going to put it on the record too. And this um, this call will have the lookup relationship mapped. So if I come in here and I have, there's a reply call. So you'll see that the inbound call, which was missed, had a reply, which was outbound. So they're mapped together. That is also super helpful. So you're able to map your inbound missed calls to an outbound reply call, and that's really helpful. Okay, so we did all that in the dashboard. I don't know if there's too much more to talk about in the dashboard. We are going to be improving the dashboard. It's something we work on quite a bit. Actually, it's one other thing I could show you too. Now I think about it. I can put all my missed calls here. If I wanted to, I could search missed calls. I can say dial current filtered calls. We will wrap all these calls up into a list and you could call them all. So if they were all missed calls and again, chances are some of these are going to be junk and spam, and you can block those in the application, though you might not know until you find out. But if you wanted to call back all your missed calls, um, you can create a list, press start call, and this is dial by list. The dial by list will call back all of your missed calls. The other, and you could do this with, this is dial by list. You can do this with any list, but this is going to pull up all of your missed calls. Um, if you wished to do so in the dashboard. Okay, so what else was there? There was my missed calls, my listen in from my in progress calls, mapping the reply call, dial by list. I felt like there was something else to talk about, and I don't remember what it was. Okay, not important. I'll come back to it. Um, okay, so we have other than this video, we have resources online. I talk about the lookup here video at this point. You watched most of it. This was actually just a couple last month. Um, but this is a specific video around the lookup. It's shorter and less detailed, but if you needed to give it to someone, we describe the lookup process here, including some screenshots of what I just showed, but that's where you can know where it is and if you need to share it with your users. We also have this is, you can search, inbound SMS lookup. I think this is actually in the blog, but you can search for this. And this is actually a training resource, so it's what we call a unit, where we talk about how to really manage missed calls. This video is last May, so the year, basically kind of an update. Um, but Again, really talking about some of the same ideas, what you can see in the widget. Um, you can see that the application's changed a bit here, but some ideas and some of the things we just talked about in the dashboard are outlined here. Um, some of the points that we make in this post, which is very detailed, is the importance of managing missed calls. And I talk in this post about what we call orphans, and that would be, records that are here, but either in the dashboard or in the widget, doesn't really matter, I guess. Matter of fact, just work from the dashboard. Here, we've left an inbound call with no lookup. So, right, um, what do you want to do with it? Do you leave it? One of the things that I've done, um, if it is, I can block it, um, but I have created a record that's called spam. It was so good I named it twice. Now there's a related record, right? I could delete it. It's up to you, but if you wanted to just, if you don't want to leave it hanging, you give it a lookup, right? If you're looking through here and, are fastidious about who this is, you call them back. We do give you the lookup to the city and state. Um, I have in my own org, I don't think we haven't actually packaged this, but I do have in my own org just a little custom button that I created to search the phone number in Google, and sometimes it'll tell you who it is. It's actually on the task, and I'm now looking at the call record. Let's see, on the task, not super, but it's just a custom button, nothing um, super fancy. But there's the task. I haven't bothered to copy that over to the call record, but there's a custom button here, both to search in Salesforce, which our application does already, but I created this as search in Google. Just takes the phone number, searches in Google. Nothing came up. What this kind of tells you is if a phone number doesn't come up in a Google search, it tells you that it's junk because any phone number that's real, that's not FedEx, that's very funny. Any phone number that's real is going to return a search, right? And this is not. It says Bandcamp. I don't know what that is. I shouldn't be searching on a public video. Who knows what I'm going to find? So, the fact is, I could pop back over to this and kind of say, yeah, no good. Um, which I suspected because it's a toll-free number. Oh, well, this is San Francisco. Well, so I can come in here and I can block it. Um, Blocking it will prevent this number from calling again. It's not going to automatically attach the call to um, to that spam record this is something I did in my own org, but you can, I mean, I could also delete it. Deleting it, it's still blocked. I can delete it. It's up to you, but part of what we talk about is just the idea of kind of keeping these clean. So you don't have lots and lots of call records with no lookups. It just means somebody has going through these calls to determine are these missed calls quality or not. And again, you can search in Google, you can voicemail, you have to make it to call them back. It's up to you. But are you triaging? That's why I titled that post triage. Are you managing these missed calls? Now, the other thing that you don't want to do, which I talk about a little bit in the video, is you can come in here and you can dial a phone number from the dial pad. And what some of our users have done is when there is a missed call, we send you an email, right? I'm not really sure why users do this, but they do. We send a missed call email. They take the phone number from the missed call email. They come over to the keypad. They paste it in here. 415, blah blah blah. Right? No, I don't want that for sure. but they type in, they decide to copy the phone number here. They make an outbound call, or they went to a website and they copied the phone number from the website, and instead of creating a record, that's actually a better example. So I come over here and I say, Fastcall, I like these guys. I'm going to talk to them. I like them a lot. Um, if I come over and copy and paste that phone number here, it creates a call record outbound, but there's no lookup, right? So next week, when I need to remember, did I call Fastcall already? Um, you'll find the call record if you search for it by phone number, but there's not going to be attached to a Salesforce record. So we always want you to attach um, a Salesforce record. Now, the fact is, you could And I'm not sure I would say to do this is would be best practices. I mean, you could dial the phone number this way, um, and you could create the lead in our application, right? Or you could end your call, have a conversation, and go back to this number and create a lead if it doesn't exist, but you just don't want to leave it. If you leave it, in this case, it's left. It's an outbound call and has no lookup, right? And you don't want that, right? Why would you? Why do you want that? That was actually because I called myself. That ended up being both. Here's the outbound call. The phone number existed in Salesforce, so we created the lookup. I'm sorry, we're too clever. It was a bad example. Because the number exists in Salesforce, we automatically created the lookup. But if it didn't exist in Salesforce, make pretend. You don't want that, right? So best practices are create lookups for outbound calls, create lookups for inbound calls, block the inbound call when you need to, delete it, mark it spam, manage it. You just don't want an org full of dirty data, which is lots of calls with no parent records. Okay, so I hope the video um, was helpful. We talked about lookups, we talked about IVR, we talked about inbound calls, we talked about user availability, logging users out. I actually didn't talk about reports. Reports are either Salesforce tasks, and there's a folder. I always hate doing this, and it's a little harder to do in there it is in Lightning. So there is a report, there's a folder for Fastcall of the reports that we put in the package, and these are really all meant to be examples because you're should be customizing these reports yourself. But essentially, you can either report on Salesforce tasks as your calls, which is the more common report, or you can report on calls. And it's really up to you. Calls are honestly more, and actually, there's one more thing I want to show you. Calls are more detailed and probably are better. But if you just want simple, you can use tasks. And there's, one or the other. There is also a unit on, I think it was named calls versus tasks. It's in here somewhere. I think there it is right there. Choosing between, right next to the one we're on, choosing between task records and call records. It's there. But you're going to create your reports around one or the other. The calls are more detailed and more data. The tasks are basic, and it's fine. Um, I did mention, and since I talked about it, under call logging, we're logging your calls, your call results, your task subject, uh, tasks, the widget interface, and call termination. Widget interface is going to control what you see on the widget. So if you don't want notes or subject, you can control that. And then if you don't put it on the widget, chances are you're not going to have it to report on, but you might not want it. But I did want to show you this option since we were just talking about it. Um, and some of these actually all relate to Salesforce tasks. Right? So these are all the options around Salesforce tasks, but the um, one that is what I'm referring to is if you don't want to create Salesforce tasks, you don't have to. And in that case, you're only using calls. Um, so your reports, you do both and have reports for both. And that's again what this unit did, which I didn't record. Um, what this unit talks about is the difference between using tasks and calls. Okay, so I think that covers should cover everything. A couple of I don't know subtle differences since we just happen to be talking about calls and tasks. Salesforce tasks can only be owned by a user, so this task can only be owned by a user, me. A call, which is again is a custom object, can be owned by a user or say me or a queue in Salesforce. So if you do want calls to be owned by a queue, you have to use calls. You can't use tasks. And if you want to assign missed calls to a case and be owned by the queue, you're going to want to use calls versus tasks. There's a few things that we're logging on tasks that we're not logging on calls. Um, task, well, you can create, task pick list might be one of them. I'd have to email me, email support@fastcall.com if that's, but those are some differences there, ownership, subtle differences. That's something you might want to think about. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up as a little bit of a more detailed video as I said. If you do have questions, please email us support@fastcall.com. You can also contact us here within the application. Um, the yeah, it's good. There was one setting that I mentioned about giving the user, and I think that might actually be a user setting. I always forget what that setting is, and I was just actually looking at it this morning, and it was something else. So there is, I mentioned this before. Here's your bonus for listening to the end of the video. I mentioned this before. Advanced inbound settings. We hide it because it's if you want to delay before switching status, you can do that. So if you want the users to have an extra 15 seconds after they finish a call before taking another call, you set that here. Some users just don't like that rapid fire. They don't want that rapid fire. Okay, um, great. So hopefully this was helpful. I really wanted to go into sort of very deep about inbound calls, missed calls. Um, I don't think I mentioned in the video we are we improve all aspects of our application continuously. We're now on version 6.34, I think. That's been 60 major updates, and we continue. We update the application every couple of weeks, at least once a month. Another area that we've been working on this dashboard quite a bit. Um, we are improving I mentioned the detail between they name this call Navigator, but the lookup relationship between these calls, it's an area that we're really focused on, not just this missed call and an outbound call, but lookup relationship between all calls. Uh, in this case, right now we're only mapping a missed call to an outbound call. We actually want to map a missed call to many outbound calls. So if you had to try back 5 times, we want to be able to map that. And we also have an open internal development task to improve how this dashboard can be projected up on a screen. You can project it as it is, but I mean, I think a one way to improve that would be let it sort of advance to different slides, right? So maybe have it go through some of these different statuses and show screens for that. So that's something that we'll work on this summer. And if there's other things that you want or you need, please email them to us. Okay, I've told you 4 times now that I'm going to finish up, so I will in fact finish up. I have an appointment I have to run to. Hopefully this was helpful. Please let us know what you thought and shoot us an email or just pop us a note via the support option in the app.